I wanted to talk about making a comp. When I'm looking at a map, I'm looking at kind of like what's the map asking me to do? Where are sort of the like points of contention that both teams are going to want to control? What are the problems that the map presents for you to solve? And then once you have that kind of understanding, it becomes a lot easier to understand like how agents can interact with the map to solve the problems that you're being presented with, right? So, for example, on Breeze, we've got a couple really critical areas. Obviously, the choke points are something that you always have to solve. So that's not really that important to think about initially. Like, you have to get through a choke point. Okay, obviously we know this. So you're gonna need some sort of like smokes and some sort of like way to explode or at least push out of a choke. Everybody knows that. I think that this is also kind of a well understood part of the map. Everybody knows you kind of have to deal with this double doors. So whether you're smoking it off, whether you're taking control of it, you have to deal with the attackers coming through here and here. If you're the defense and if you're the attackers, you need to worry about an op getting on this line and controlling middle. And then the last part of the map that's really, really important now that Halls is gone is elbow. And probably elbow is maybe the most important part of like the left side of the map at this point. I feel like a lot of teams put a huge amount of emphasis on elbow because especially with like Cypher being so prevalent where this trip is really hard to get through. Everybody has been like splitting B by coming through elbow and then coming this way. And one of the things that makes Breach really, really good is that if you can find lines that are straight on a map, it becomes, you know, very powerful. And beyond that, it becomes even more powerful when the line that you're trying to get through has a spawn barrier, right? Because spawn barriers are places where people tend to stack up. You know, there's going to be people trying to push from here. And one of the first moves that everybody needs to make on the attack side is to try and get into elbow, right? You try and get into elbow and you try and get out into B main. And so if you can stop people from getting into those critical spots with a single piece of utility that regenerates over time, that seems pretty good to me. And so, and there's like no way to avoid this. The only way to avoid this is to play like way back here or, you know, in window. So if you instantly stun this every round as a breach, you're denying the attackers access to this part of the map for at least a couple of seconds, because then that buys you enough time to, let's say, get an operator onto this line. And once you have this line, now you're taxing the other team for getting the map control that they need, right? So if we can combine this with some early space being taken into elbow by a character like a Jet who can escape, or a character like a Yoru who can also escape, or a character like a Chamber who can also escape, now we're kind of like maybe onto something, right? Because now we're actually accomplishing something that's really important for this map. This is kind of like where my general thought about Breach came in, is like, oh, I can shut down elbow insanely consistently, really, really easily for very, very little resource cost. Another part of the map that the attackers are going to very, very consistently try and take immediately as soon as the round starts is A main, because this orb is like basically free for the attackers. Like, it's really well set up for the attackers to take this orb. So what if we put a breach stun over here? Again, same kind of thing. The choke point is so skinny that you're basically going to hit people with 100% success rate with this stun, which means that once again, you can set up an operator on this line like for free every round. Okay. So we can get, you know, a Jet out here with an op. We can get a Yoru, Chamber, whatever you wanted to use. Honestly, same thing over here. Okay, here's the spawn barrier. Another place that the attackers are going to try and take super early is mid control, and this stun is not quite as good or consistent as the two previous ones, but it's also not bad, right? And if you can stun on this line and then maybe even like flash the pillar, because you can throw a flash from here and it'll flash from the pillar, then let's talk about the attacking side as well, because obviously that's very important. So right now, the critical things that you have to deal with are this Cypher Trip, which is causing everybody problems, and then some sort of like op pressure in elbow or op pressure in middle, or op pressure in double doors. Okay, so again, Breach is pretty good at dealing with almost all of this. So with Breach, you can actually aftershock this like with 100% consistency, because there's really only one place that this trip can be, like the broken trip that is very hard for people to deal with, is it has to be on these steps. And so you can just come up here without risking yourself at all, and you can just aftershock through this wall, and it will break the trip every round, and it will also clear this cubby, which is, you know, extra value. Or if you wanted to, you could also throw the aftershock through this side of the wall, and it will break the trip there, and it will also block people from contesting you from this corner. So right off the bat, pretty good value from Breach, right? Aftershock, kind of a hard ability to get value from a lot of the time. So if you can find something that it does consistently every round, it's not a bad investment. Maybe a little bit better is aftershocking double doors, because this is much easier to hit. It will deny the op line there. And this could be an aftershock or a fault line rather, or it could be a flashpoint through, you know, the box. Both of these are totally acceptable and will work to stop people from peeking you immediately there. And then same thing here. If you want to take this orb every single round and farm your ultimate, there's no way for people to stop you from getting up here if you just instantly fault line the choke point. So this is all, again, like super consistent, free value that you get with Breach by just using the fault line, which again regenerates. So from what I'm seeing so far, Breach is kind of solving problems on the map that are going to be consistently presented in like every round. So now let's talk about, let's just say that you guys accept that Breach is good. You know, just at a totally objective level, Breach has the ability to do good things on a map. So what do you do next? Well, we need to build a comp around him. So if we have Breach as a core piece of our sort of like problem solving kit on this map, I think right off the bat, if I'm going to use Breach to control stuff on defense, I need a character that can use the operator. So we need a character that's aggressive, that can take aggressive lines with the operator, that has an escape mechanism, because they want to be taking these aggressive lines. And also another great thing about playing a Jet is that it solves one of our other problems, which is getting through a choke point, right? We need to get through a choke point, often a choke point that is going to have, you know, some Cypher utility. So being able to jump over and dash through, or updraft and dash, is also nice. You know, let's say the Breach dies, for example. Maybe we didn't have time to actually break the trip. So having another option to actually get through a choke point if you lose a character is also really good. So like building redundancy into your comp is kind of nice. So we'll go ahead and put the Jet up here. Other options for this aggressive line taking would be, you know, a Yoru or a Chamber. And probably that's about it. Honestly, I suppose you could throw a Reyna in there, but it's not as consistent as the other ones. That might be like my last option is the Reyna. Okay, so the next piece of this is the Viper, right? Everybody kind of agrees Viper is too good on this map not to play. You kind of have to play the Viper just because the wall is too good. Like if you don't have this wall, what are you doing, right? We need a wall smoker in general, so Viper is kind of like the first choice. Obviously, Harbor is the only other one, and maybe we want to run both. Who knows? Okay, so the next piece that we're potentially missing is if we're running a wall smoke, we kind of want a pop flash, right? And unfortunately for Breach, you can't really pop flash with Breach because you can't target the wall with your flashes. So we kind of want an agent that can flash through the wall. And so options would be, you know, like a KO, a Sky, a Gecko, a Phoenix, I suppose. These are kind of the ones that can flash through a wall. And now we kind of have like the basics of a comp. And so then the last piece that people are probably thinking about is like a sentinel character, right? This would be like a solo smokes comp. So we need kind of like a sentinel character, right? And so everybody's kind of defaulting to Cypher just because this trip is so strong, right? In my opinion, I think that Cypher is overrated. I think he's good, and I think that he forces you to do stuff on this map in particular, like to deal with this B main choke that is maybe irreplaceable. So I'm inclined to play the Cypher, but I don't think you necessarily have to. A lot of the times, if the Cypher's playing A, they use 2 kill trips and a camera to like scout, and then you kind of play off of that. And if you're playing B, then you just play the camera to watch your mid line like this, and then you play off the kill trip here. And so honestly, it's not like Cypher's trying to control multiple lanes at once. We're kind of playing Cypher as like a traditional stop the exec sentinel as opposed to like an info sentinel. So if that's the case, then that's a lot more replaceable to me. If we are guaranteed to play the breach, like we're not going to give up the breach, and we need to pop flash, what if we just took a Yoru over the Jet? Okay, so if we take a Yoru over the Jet, we still have the ability to op aggressively. We still have the ability to exec on sites and teleport into sites with the Yoru. The Yoru actually pairs really, really nicely with the breach, right? Because if we have the breach with the stun out and the Yoru dimensional drifts in, then we can stun off the dimensional drift, and then the Yoru can come out of the dimensional drift and kill whoever gets stunned. So that's kind of a nice combo that we now have access to if we're playing the Yoru and the breach together. And if we play the Yoru and the breach together, then we don't need the Jet, okay? So Jet's gone. And if we have the pop flash through the wall with the Yoru, then maybe we don't need any of these agents, okay? And if we don't need any of those agents, now maybe we can play a second smoke, okay? So that's kind of cool. Now we're missing info, obviously, but we'll get to that in a second. So if we play the Yoru and the breach here, and then we play the Viper, and let's say we want to play a second smoke, okay? Arbor Viper, Yoru breach, still kind of missing info. Okay, so what if we just go ahead and throw in, one of the best info agents on the map, a Sova? Okay, this looks like kind of a weird comp, right? But if we actually think about it in terms of the jobs that need to be done, okay, yeah. So this is the basic comp right here. Okay, so why is KO played? KO is played because he's a good counter to the Viper and the Cypher, right? KO is good against these, which other people are playing a lot. He gives you pop flash value through the wall. He gives you information, and basically that. Okay, so we need information. Well, we have some here, and we have a little bit of sort of tertiary information from the Yoru. So it's maybe not as good as the KO, but it's close. We have pop flash from the Yoru. I mean, you can't really replace the suppress, but you can still counter the Cypher and the Viper with some of the stuff that the Yoru is doing, and also potentially just like use your Sova stuff a little differently, drone specifically for the Viper potentially. We're still essentially solving the same problems with this comp, but let's cook a little bit more, okay? Let's say we really don't want to run a Sova with 2 wall smokes, which I think is maybe a valid problem to have with this, okay? So in that case, and we want a little bit more info. We want a dog maybe. So, okay, let's run a Sky. Sure, no problem. Let's run a Sky. Now we have 2 characters that can pop flash. We've got 6 flashes. That might be a little bit of overkill, right? That might be a little bit too much. Okay, let's play a Sentinel, because we're worried about getting flanked through middle or something like that. Let's play a Sentinel. Okay, now we're playing Chamber. Chamber's pretty good on this map. We can still take this aggressive line here with the breach, getting us on the line. Now, the main thing that we're missing is kind of exec power, but we do have a breach. And we have a breach that can farm this orb every single round if we want to. And we have a Sky that can farm this orb every single round if we want to. So, sure, we're missing a little bit of the exec power of the Yoru or like the Jet dash in. But if we're smart with how we're using our utility and we kill this trip at B main every single round with the breach aftershock, and then we just put up 2 walls and we put up our orb, chances are we're probably going to be able to get on the B site pretty easily. That's another option that we could run that, in my opinion, solves the exact same problems that this comp does, in just a slightly different way. So yeah, that's basically my take on why Breach could work on Breeze and why teams should maybe try it out, and how it could potentially work, and how you could actually like build a comp around a specific concept